The holding bay of the Celestial Reach hummed with the low thrum of engines, but the sound was drowned out by something far more primal, the deep, rattling growls of 3 Carvathi cubs. Their obsidian fur bristled like storm clouds. Razor-sharp teeth bared at the tall figure standing before them. Captain Drayan Voss, commander of the interstellar research vessel, stood rigid in his environmental suit, his 4 amber eyes narrowed in frustration. The Carvathi were apex predators from the death world of Carvath Prime, feared across 12 systems. Even their young were dangerous enough to tear through reinforced steel. And yet here he was, tasked with transporting these orphaned cubs to a rehabilitation station. "Comply," Voss barked, his translator crackling with authority. He gestured sharply toward the containment module, a transparent enclosure designed to safely house the cubs during transit. "You will enter the module, now." The largest cub, barely the size of a hover car but already possessing the musculature of a killer, crouched lower, its growl deepening into something that vibrated through the deck plating. The other 2 flanked it, their eyes glowing like molten copper in the dim light. Voss activated his neural command interface, preparing to deploy the sonic deterrents built into the bay walls. These creatures needed to understand discipline, order, the way things were done aboard a proper vessel of the Galactic Coalition. "Captain." The voice was soft but carried an unexpected weight. Voss turned to see Elena Ward stepping through the bay entrance, her plain jumpsuit a stark contrast to his ornate uniform. The human liaison officer had been assigned to his ship 3 months ago, and in that time, Voss had found her perplexing. Humans were relatively new to the Coalition, and their methods often seemed inefficient. Emotional, irrational. "Miss Ward, I did not summon you," Voss said, his mandibles clicking in annoyance. "This is a security matter." Elena moved past him without hesitation, her movements slow and deliberate. "They don't like shouting," she said simply. Voss's translator hiccuped as if struggling to process the statement. "These are Carvathi predators, not domestic pets. Firmness is required. They're scared cubs who just lost their pack," Elena interrupted, still walking toward the snarling trio. "And you're a giant alien yelling at them in a metal box." Before Voss could protest, Elena dropped to one knee about 10 meters from the cubs. She didn't make eye contact. Instead, she turned her body slightly to the side, making herself smaller, less threatening. The largest cub's growl faltered for just a moment. Voss watched, frozen between professional outrage and genuine curiosity. No Coalition protocol covered this approach. Elena reached into her pocket and produced something small, a ration cube, the kind used for emergency sustenance. She placed it on the ground and slid it gently toward the cubs, then sat back on her heels. The cubs stared. The largest one sniffed the air, its nostrils flaring. "I know you're hungry," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know everything is strange and loud and scary, but I promise you're safe here." Voss's translator rendered her words into the harmonic frequencies that Carvathi Young might understand. But it was more than the words. It was her posture, her tone, the absence of threat in every gesture. The human concept of body language suddenly made more sense to him than it ever had in the cultural briefings. The largest cub took a tentative step forward. Then another. Its siblings followed, their growls diminishing to uncertain rumbles. When the lead cub reached the ration cube, it sniffed carefully before consuming it in one bite. Then it looked at Elena, really looked at her, and something in its posture softened. Elena slowly extended her hand, palm down, fingers relaxed. "That's it. You're doing great." The cub approached until its nose nearly touched her hand. Voss felt his respiratory system seize. One wrong move and the human would lose that hand, possibly her arm, possibly her life. He reached for the sonic deterrent controls, but Elena remained perfectly still, breathing slowly. The cub sniffed her hand, then, impossibly, pressed its massive head against her palm. The other 2 cubs crept closer, their aggression evaporating like morning frost. Within minutes, all 3 cubs were sitting around Elena like, as the humans said, puppies. She scratched behind their ears, murmured soft words, and gradually guided them toward the containment module. They followed her willingly, even eagerly, into the space they had refused to enter moments before. When the module sealed safely and the cubs settled down to rest, Elena stood and brushed off her knees. She turned to find Captain Voss staring at her, all 4 eyes wide with something approaching awe. "How?" he began, then stopped, recalibrating his translator. How did you know that would work? Elena smiled. A uniquely human expression that Voss was beginning to understand meant warmth rather than aggression. We have a saying on Earth. Animals don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Fear and authority just make them more scared. But patience, gentleness, showing them you're not a threat, that works on almost any species. Voss looked at the peacefully resting cubs, then back at Elena. In his 3 decades of service, he had commanded through discipline, hierarchy, and protocol. The idea that vulnerability could be a form of strength was alien to him, and yet he had just witnessed its effectiveness. Your species continues to surprise me, Miss Ward, he admitted. We've had a lot of practice, Elena said, glancing at the cubs with obvious affection. Humans domesticated wolves thousands of years ago. We've been turning predators into friends for a very long time. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose kindness over force. As they left the holding bay, Voss found himself reconsidering not just his approach to the cubs, but to his crew, to diplomacy, to leadership itself. Perhaps humanity's strength wasn't in their technology or their aggression, though they had both in abundance. Perhaps it was in their peculiar ability to see the frightened child in even the most dangerous predator. And perhaps that was the most terrifying and wonderful thing about them.